Hi there, you're listening to Unnatural Selection, the show about newsy type stuff and things. My name is George.
My name is Tom.
And my name is Adam.
And with our powers combined, we are Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. So World War III might have started this week.
I've got to say, we ready for that? It's a bit disconcerting that it's... I don't know, what's more disconcerting that World War III could actually happen, or that it's like, maybe it'll happen this week?
There's a 50-50 on World War III. What's the over-under on World War III happening this week? Adam, what do you reckon?
Look, Sportsbet have got $3.50 for but if you bet with mates, you get a discount on that. So it actually comes down to $2. Sorry, it goes up to $4.50, but you get a bonus bet back. So it's actually a really good advertisement.
Now, if it just turns out to be a police action, do I get some of that money back? Or like if they just invade a little bit
you get your bet back in bonus bets for your next bet. So that's really important that, when you bet with Sportsbet that you've got... I shouldn't actually I shouldn't be saying that betting company's name because they've recently been in strife for sending people text messages that they shouldn't have been.
And I'm just getting a cease and desist. Please stop mentioning our brand, you fucking mug. Okay, well, there you go.
But I'm sure there would be... I mean, it's funny we talk about it, we're joking about it, but there's probably a market somewhere.
Of betting on this sort of stuff?
Yeah, 100%.
Mate, they gamble on everything. Outcomes of elections, all that sort of stuff. World events and things. They definitely do. Sometimes it's always like, if you want a real poll, check where the money is going. What are people betting on? And that's how people are feeling. I haven't immediately found, though, the betting odds on whether or not World War III is going to start. Maybe one's being open about it, but I bet it's out there somewhere.
It might be that's a bridge too far for Sportsbet. They can definitely, let you gamble on the lives of horses, and their well-being. But human beings, that's a whole nother kettle of fish.
Well, we know where reanimated corpse Joe Biden sits on the issue because he came out and issued a vociferous for him statement saying that he was convinced that Russia was going to attack Ukraine sometime in the next week, and it's seeming increasingly inevitable that might be the case, despite Putin having said last week that they were pulling out, and all the news media just reporting it breathlessly. All the stock markets went up, a big sigh of relief. Everyone was like, well, it seems the notoriously untrustworthy guy says, don't worry about it. So everything's looking good. Ethereum's up 10%.
It was really funny, actually, this week because the Ukrainian president came out and basically said, I think it was on Wednesday, that they're going to have a national day of unity because some people had said, that the Russians were going to invade on Wednesday. But of course, everyone took that as that's an intel update. They're going to invade on Wednesday. Everyone started panicking. And as you're right, the share market went and
share market is just a graph of rich people's feelings, as we've often discussed on the show.
Yeah. And then he had to, his office had to issue a clarification, which was like, no. Other people have said that they're going to invade on Wednesday. We're just going to... I was being sarcastic.
We're just repeating something that someone else said. The government.
Also, I wouldn't put it past Vladimir Putin to be like, they said we're going to invade on Wednesday. Let's do it on Thursday. Fuck them. I really think it is just this kind of Russian... kind of active measures, psychological warfare kind of, trying to, game theory sort of bullshit where it's just like, okay, you think I'm going to do something? I'm going to do not that just for the sake of fucking with your head, right? Anyway, so here's Joe Biden, the Weekend at Bernie style, telling the American public about the impending invasion.
Today, I made two vital calls, as I've been making for some months now. Two vital calls on the situation in Russia and Ukraine. The first was to a bipartisan group of members of Congress who are currently representing the United States, along with Vice President Harris at the Munich Security Conference. The second was the latest in a series of calls over the past many months with the heads of state of our NATO allies and the European Union, to bring them up to date on what the United States thinks is the current state of affairs and what's likely to happen in Ukraine in the coming days, to ensure that we continue to remain in lockstep, that is, the European Union and NATO. Despite Russia's efforts to divide us at home and abroad, I can affirm that has not happened. The overwhelming message of on both calls was one of unity, determination, and resolve. I shared with all of those on the calls what we know about a rapidly escalating crisis in Ukraine. Over the last few days, we've seen reports of a major uptick in violations of the ceasefire by Russian-backed fighters attempting to provoke Ukraine and the Donbass. For example, a shelling of a Ukrainian kindergarten yesterday, which Russia has falsely asserted was carried out by Ukraine. We also continue to see more and more disinformation being pushed out to the Russian public, including Russian-backed separatists, claiming that Ukraine is planning to launch a massive offensive attack in the Donbass. Well, look, there is simply no evidence of these assertions, and it defies basic logic to believe the Ukrainians would choose this moment, with well over 150,000 troops arrayed on its borders, to escalate a year-long conflict. Russia's state media also continues to make phony allegations of a genocide taking place in the Donbass and push fabricated claims warning about Ukraine's attack on Russia without any evidence. That's just what I'm sure Ukraine's thinking of doing, attacking Russia. All of these are consistent with the playbook the Russians have used before, to set up a false justification to act against Ukraine. This is also in line with the pretext scenarios that the United States and our allies and partners have been warning about for weeks. Throughout these tense moments, the Ukrainian forces have shown great judgment and, I might add, restraint. They refused to allow the Russians to bait them into war. But the fact remains, Russian troops currently have Ukraine surrounded from Belarus along the Russian border and with Ukraine to the Black Sea in the south and all of its border. You know, look, we have reason to believe the Russian forces are planning to and intend to attack Ukraine in the coming week, in the coming days. We believe that they will target Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, a city of 2.8 million innocent people. We're calling out Russia's plans loudly and repeatedly, not because we want a conflict, but because we're doing everything in our power to remove any reason that Russia may give to justify invading Ukraine and prevent them from moving. Make no mistake, if Russia pursues its plans, it will be responsible for a catastrophic and needless war of choice. The United States and our allies are prepared to defend every inch of NATO territory from any threat to our collective security as well. We also will not send troops in to fight in Ukraine, but we will continue to support the Ukrainian people. This past year, the United States provided.
Yeah, so that's none of that's good.
Yeah, no, that sounds good.
You feel warm on the
Especially
inside, boys?
literally. Like, have you hearing him speak? It was like, oh man, he needs a nap.
He is so old.
Man needs a shot of B12 or a Barocca or something. Give him a double espresso before you send him out there, man. I know, it's not good.
No wonder his approval rating's so bad. Americans must listen to him talk and just go, "Oh my god, he's about to keel over." Like, what are we voting for?
Yeah.
Like, I'd be really curious to see whether I don't think he'll have the stamina to go for a second term. Like, surely not.
Assuming he's still alive at that stage, apparently the word on the street is yes, he intends to run for a second term.
Of course, he'd say that.
But
why would you say otherwise?
This is kind of a podcast for another day, but like all the indications are the Democrats are going to get fucking slaughtered at the midterms coming up. So yeah, it's not looking good, and Kamala Harris is not really seen as a
unifying
responsible choice, very unpopular and kind of not seen as being up to the task. So yeah, that's a whole other issue. But yes, it seems as though that's exactly what's happening, right? And like, for all, we're making fun of Joe Biden's low energy Joe. It does seem to be the right tactic. I think it is. It seems at this point inevitable that Russia and Ukraine are going to war. I don't think there's anything that Joe Biden or his people necessarily could have done to prevent that. But
they could have potentially done what the Russians wanted them to, but that would be a pretty massive capitulation.
Oh, what, to pull back and say that Ukraine would never become part of NATO, and also pull back to 1997 borders? Yeah, absolutely not.
They did change their offer early last week, I think, to just being like, if you just give us the guarantee over Ukraine, then maybe we can talk.
That's not up to the US to give.
And Ukraine have said, we would rather be with NATO than with Russia.
It's in Ukraine's constitution. Like, it's part of their founding document that they're going to move to being part of Ukraine. Like, that's not something that you can just, like, America can't just NATO, decide that for a democratic country, so it would be a massive capitulation to turn around and say, oh no, actually America decides that Ukraine can't be part of NATO.
It's funny. I was looking at some of the stuff that they did in Crimea and in Georgia. And it is like he's right. There is a Russian playbook, and they did the same thing. Yeah. They've done the same thing the last 3 invasions they've launched.
They've been handing out hundreds of thousands of Russian passports like they're fucking Pez dispensers. And then they go, oh, look at the genocide happening to Russian citizens in Ukraine. And everyone's looking around going, what Russian genocide? I haven't seen any Russian genocide. And they're like, I actually, all these videos have come out of like, Russian propaganda, saying, oh, this has been bombed by Ukraine, or this is, Ukrainians undertaking XYZ actions. And forensic experts have looked at the videos and the metadata, and they're like, yeah, this was shot days or weeks ago. It doesn't depict what you're saying it depicts. Like, these buses are all empty that are, and I think that's part of the playbook as well. Like,
yeah, it is.
To have a kind of obviously flimsy justification. And it's this very Soviet thing of like, you believe what I tell you to believe, like to have it be like kind of obviously a bit false and then force you to believe it anyway is kind of like this, like 1984 kind of like you've won the thought war against people. The fact that we can look at it, it's like, it's not, am I making sense? It's not actually material that's made to convince. It's material that's to be used as an obviously fake justification for what they wanted to do anyway.
Yeah. I mean, they did the same thing in Georgia, like in the and just slightly different circumstance, but with the South Ossetia, there was a sort of autonomous region that had been shelling parts of Georgia, and then so the Georgians went, fuck this. They sent troops in to to capture the area and like stop the shelling, and the Russians were like, you're being hostile, and they just launched a full invasion of Georgia.
Yeah, Russia is the bully that's like, stop hitting yourself, stop hitting yourself, stop hitting yourself, stop hitting yourself. And then when someone turns around and goes, hey, mate, I don't really love how you've been punching me in the head constantly, Russia's like, you provoked me, violence. Like, that really is the kind of, it's like school ground kind of fucking politics. I don't remember the exact quote, but it was something in 1984, which was like, if they could get you to believe things that you knew to be false, then they would have won. They won your mind. Like, that's it is a very like Soviet Russian kind of tactic of like, who are you going to believe, me or your lying eyes, right?
It's pretty funny because like Russia have said, we're pulling troops back now. The drills are finished, and looking at our satellite imagery because we can see in the pictures.
Yeah, we can see the pictures. We got the satellites up in the sky, bro. We got them. We can see everything.
There are some cynical people like that I know of anyway that would say, "Oh, well, how do you know the Americans aren't lying? It's all part of their information
and that's the point.
war."
It's not the misinformation, the disinformation warfare doesn't need to be good enough to actually stand up to scrutiny. It just needs to be just enough to sow doubt.
Like, do you really believe Biden? Yeah, Biden and his agenda? Like he's just trying to fuck with Putin, all this kind of shit.
And it's not to. It is not the place of countries in the 21st century to be invading and taking over democratically elected countries, taking over democratically elected governments. We all know the right way to do that is via a stealth campaign undertaken by the CIA
via Facebook using,
That's the way to do it. You don't invade like a douchebag. You do it secretly, behind the scenes, assassinating people via the CIA to overthrow democratically elected Latin American governments. That's the way to do it.
And yeah, do you want to invade a country? We can do it without 160,000 men.
Actually, it's a great just little memory you've just tweaked there of the failed coup in Venezuela a couple of years ago, where they got the American mercenaries to try and
it wasn't even take
over the capital.
That's a whole podcast just by itself. Yeah,
that is such a podcast.
This guy, I could definitely see like a 6-part New York Times fucking.
We talked about it for about half an hour, a couple of
it literally deserves its own TV series. I expect a Shondaland production of this at some point in the future. But it's so this guy was like a failed mercenary who kind of bullshitted his way into getting a bunch of money to try a Venezuelan coup to overthrow the government, which obviously didn't work, but got far enough that it was incredibly concerning.
And the fact was that the people he was working with ended up ratting him out. So when they did when they landed, the forces where they were going to try and do the coup, there's always police just waiting
for them.
Just everyone got arrested. Yeah, it really is one of those films that's sort of my wife is watching this Inventing Anna show. Yeah. And it's about this woman who conned sort of New York high society out of millions of dollars and all this sort of stuff. It's it really is like that, except just with geopolitics. But the thing is things like that in history, crazier things than that have actually been pulled off and have worked. In recent history, the president of Haiti was murdered in his home. And, it was just a successful coup by just a handful of guys. And they're just it's crazy shit like that does actually happen. And we've played into it because now we're talking about coups that America's done rather than the all-out full-scale military intervention that Russia
might be about to do.
Right, because it's America has done a bunch of fucked up stuff that's good. The track record is pretty not good for the American empire.
And you look at it you look at back in the 80s with the what was his name, Reagan and
Iran-Contra scandal and
that was Carter, but the stuff in
Iran-Contra was definitely Reagan and the Reagan administration.
But South Latin country Operation Grenada.
Yeah, that was one of them.
And there was another one in South America that they did to stop the commies.
The Bay of Pigs in Cuba.
No, there was one in the late 80s.
The 60s, that was towards the start of JFK. Oh, there's been...
Nicaragua, I'm thinking of.
Nicaragua, yeah. There's been a long and very complicated history of, America overthrowing democratically elected, lefty, socialist communist governments in Latin America. It's real bad. The American empire is a real thing. And yet,
practically the national pastime.
And it's kind of America's favorite thing to do is overthrow other people's left of center democratically elected governments.
Whether you like freedom or not.
Yeah, we will liberate you to freedom.
And despite all of that, I'd still America be the global hegemon rather than Russia. It's just a choice between two evils. And, Vladimir Putin's twirling his snidely whiplash mustache over in the corner, and you've got old, dopey Joe Biden on the other side. It's fine. I'm fine with Joe Biden. I'm totally fine with, this dozy cow being the global hegemon. That's fine by me. I really don't want Russia and China in charge. It would be significantly worse.
So World War III might be happening. That's
it was fun. The thing that triggered my interest this week was that they repeated the separatist rebels in the east started putting out statements we're fully mobilizing, we're calling up the reserves because Ukraine is now shelling us.
Yeah,
without providing any evidence,
preventing all combat age males from leaving the region, that sort of stuff, evacuating.
And the Russians are see, it's happening, and we're no, we said that you would do this.
Yes. That's the crazy thing is they're the West's strategy is, which I think is the right strategy, is to like call out in advance all the things that we think that they're likely to like call out the playbook before it happens, and then go, see, this is what we said would happen, and this is exactly what they're claiming. And then the Russians see that and they go, I call your strategy of saying what happens before it's going to happen, and I raise you doing it the fuck anyway. They're just like, they're going to claim that we're genociding them. And then the Russians are like, they are genociding us. I don't give a fuck what you said. Yeah, sure. That's whatever you said the strategy was going to be. Yeah, that's coincidentally, they are just starting now to genocide us. So that's, what a weird coincidence.
Weird fluke.
Weird. It's
anyway.
Crazy. Like it's the doing it in plain sight, which I find so fucking crazy making. It's like, yeah, they just don't give a fuck. Like Putin doesn't care if it's like transparently evil. He's just going to do it anyway.
I feel like the pretense has been, it's probably just because I guess all the pretense has been to sort of see whether or not they could get away without a war, because if they do that, it means that they can do it for cheaper. Whereas certainly if they do invade, then it's going to be pretty costly for the Russian economy and stuff. But
it's going to be costly for everyone. Like stocks have taken a dive. Like obviously it going into winter for Australia and us being reliant on, petrol and all, these kind of fossil fuels that Russia's a big producer of, like it's going to be bad for us. As well as everyone in the global community. Like it's not good for it. Like war, aside from the war profiteers, war is not good. Like it's not good for the economy. Yeah. It's very
Lockheed Martin did very well out of it, incidentally.
Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Raytheon. There's a bunch of companies out there that
systems. They
seem to do okay during conflicts for whatever reason, unbeknownst to us. But like, yeah, for everyone else, like war is very costly, and also like tens of thousands of innocent people might die, which is like not a nothing thing. It's just really, it's bad. War is bad.
But don't worry, George, because the Australian government is trying to protect us from foreign interference here in Australia, and God damn, they're gonna crack down on it, and they're gonna succeed. And don't you worry about those lefties. They're gonna protect us from the communist overlords that is the Labor Party.
Well, what about? What's better? What's better than foreign interference? Your own damn interference. Foreign nations won't interfere in our elections. We'll do it for them.
We shouldn't outsource our foreign interference jobs. All of our foreign interference jobs should be done domestically by here in Australia by Australians. Where are the jobs of the 21st century?
We talked about last week that basically the ASIO boss had put a speech out basically saying that Russia and China, he didn't allude too much to the countries, but basically Russia and China were trying to sort of potentially look at ways to interfere in one of our elections. He didn't go into specifics about which one. And then ever since then, the government and Liberal National Party have been using that as an excuse to effectively just say that, the Labor Party are somehow
just
Chinese
a bunch of communists.
Yeah, well, they can't at the moment with everything flying left and right of ScoMo's horrific 60 Minutes interview, or the incompetence, the bushfires, the sports rorts, the everything. They can't be pointing at themselves being like, vote for us, how good are we? So, of course, they have to turn the tactic over to like the Reds under the bed, as you said last week. They have to turn it into, but no, the other guys are dangerous.
I thought they'd drop it. I thought, this is obviously such a transparent.
It's just like tactic. Obviously like below, like just when you think they couldn't go any lower, just like they're scraping the bottom of the barrel, they break through to the fucking basement. Like this is a whole new low for the LNP. Like it is actually, I was watching ScoMo and all these other various LNP fucking shills on, various breakfast programs going on and defending basically, defending corruption, defending just like open-faced, bald-faced, defending this obviously abhorrent thing, which is like, aside from being completely untrue, is also like fucking disgusting to say about people who you share a parliament with. Like, it's one thing like Labor want higher taxes, Liberal Party want lower taxes. Like, or I just don't think he hasn't had, Anthony Albanese hasn't had a security portfolio in his 25 years of service. Like, okay, those are maybe unfair things to say about your opponent, but like, I could see your two sides of an issue. That's something you could hit your opponent with. But it's just to just be like, my opponent is a Manchurian candidate and is a Russian prop is like, fucking, it's the worst fucking thing I've seen in Australian politics. Like, Question Time this week was a fucking joke. It was like school kids on the playground. It was absolutely fucking disgusting.
And you're implying that it's not always like school kids in the playground.
It's always pretty bad.
It was bad this week.
Yeah.
I've never seen it like this.
And that's probably the thing is that the develop this week is that the sledging got a bit more out of hand.
Yeah.
Do we have video of said sledging? Or
yes,
do we not?
We do.
We do a
so
video?
we've got Scott Morrison here, being a bit of a fuckwit and saying a bunch of dumb words, for which he was. I love the speaker of their house, who's obviously a Liberal Party member, because that's the way the rules work, because our country is broken. It seems to hear all the convenient things. He seems to hear the opposition when they say anything that's like slightly fucked, but like doesn't hear Scott Morrison when he says things that are obviously fucked, but also hears him apologize and withdraw those comments even though no one else did. Anyway, let's have a watch.
Was, of course, the Deputy Leader of the Labor Party when he went up to Beijing, Mr. Speaker, and you won't be able to find the speech that he gave to the Beijing Foreign Studies University, Mr. Speaker. He's taken it off his website.
The Prime Minister...
We got another Manchurian...
I didn't hear it. What? Just hang on. Just wait. The Deputy Leader of the Opposition on a point of order.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker, and it's on the dignity of the House, which this Prime Minister is undermining. The defence cooperation was started by your
The Deputy
government,
Leader of the Opposition will resume his seat. The Deputy Leader of the Opposition will resume his seat. I don't need to hear from the Leader of the House. The Prime Minister withdrew. He did. He said, I withdraw. The microphone didn't pick it up. So if you could just return to the speech box.
Mr. House, I will withdraw again, Mr.
Thank
Speaker. On this, in that article, he said the election needs to leave Australia in a stronger position to deal with
So he doesn't apparently hear Scott Morrison say that the other Richard Marles, the deputy deputy Labor leader, was a Manchurian candidate, which is also like a fucking disgusting, vile lie to say about someone. Like, to say that it's someone
as well is. Should we explain what that is for people?
So Manchurian candidate is based on a film where it was he was secretly a Russian acting on behalf of the Russians, right?
Sinatra film, isn't it? The original one.
Yeah, I thought so. Frank Sinatra.
I haven't seen it, but yeah, I'm familiar with it as a term, as a political attack that one might levy in bad faith against another political actor. But yeah, it means that someone is being used as a puppet by an enemy power, and it's like, all of the sources that this investigation that ASIO did. ASIO is our security agency here in Australia, and they apparently foiled a plot for foreign interference that, presumably China was looking to undertake against Labor candidates in the New South Wales state election. Now, they confirmed that none of those candidates ended up getting through. And in the words of, as the ASIO boss, he said that Anthony Albanese's characterization of that conversation was correct, and that none of these candidates had made it through, and certainly none on a federal level. Like, there's no question about the current slate of.
He's actually been really, really upset by that. I think
because it's obviously politicizing.
He's just been used as a political football here.
Yes,
and another former ASIO boss also came out and was like, "What the government's doing right now is like despicable.
It's
Like,
disgusting.
why are you?
Former Prime Minister of the, who was a member of the Liberal National Party, Malcolm Turnbull, said it's absurd to say that Anthony Albanese or others, Richard Marles, are, puppets of the Chinese government. You said you may as well call them a Martian. Like, that's how it's just like untethered from reality. And it's just like a fucking disgusting, vile lie. And they've tried it on and they've won a couple media cycles out of it. And so they're like, great, this is the strategy. It's like, who cares if it completely disrupts our national politics and poisons the well, makes Australians question their own democracy and ruins the fabric of society. It's like, oh, but could we? It's just so desperate. They're so desperate, bro. Like, rather than just trying to get people to vote for you because you will give them things that they want, they're just like, maybe the other guy's a fucking communist. Bland, white bread, Anthony Albanese, who takes positions slightly left of center. They're saying his fucking comrade Albanese, he's got to team up with the Greens. It's going to be better dead than red. Like, it's just such a fucking joke. It's
So
implausible to me that a human thinking person with a brain could actually believe this. And I'm scared that it's actually going to work. That's the thing with scare campaigns, is they can actually work.
this has been happening at question time. Albanese then called Scott Morrison a Manchurian candidate himself in the back and forth.
Yeah, and that was completely unhelpful. It's like, if there's a Manchurian candidate on either side, it's your side sort of thing. By calling someone, it was just like, no, you can't talk about how bad using that phrase is and then use it back at them. Like, very unhelpful, Anthony. Like, it's just
Got him.
The Labour Party handed an opportunity and they fuck it up.
Oh god, they just the rumor was that they held an emergency meeting this week. The Labour Party is to, now that they've got the lead in the polls, they say, how can we best fuck this up to make sure we lose the election? It's really like, how can you, how do you fuck this up? Like,
So
well, they found a way.
George has been referring to with some of this rhetoric is that over the last week, and probably even leading up to this as well, there's been a number of advertisements that have started to come up, as well as Liberal members of Parliament, senators, that kind of thing, who have been starting to do the earned media cycle stuff, where they're now calling that out as actual issues that should be considered at the election. So the ads, for instance, are all targeting, like there's one here, which and it is such, you're right, it is such classic Liberal playbook stuff. Tom, I was wondering if you want to talk us through, if you've got the Guardian article up.
Yes, I do. So
the first ad it's in that.
Yeah, that first one there,
which is in the Australian for a start.
Weird.
But just if you were to cast your artistic eyes over that and just give me some of the themes that are coming through.
Well, yeah, there's some interesting themes sort of in there. The fact that there's a picture of a is warship the traditional term? Troop carrier? I don't know, but a giant ship. And a headline that combines both the Greens and the Labour Party in a similar sentiment. So already you can see what they're doing there, where it's not even enough for them to be saying we don't like, the Labour Party or the other guys, but it's like, oh, they're practically the third people that you don't like, our base. Like, we all know you don't like them greenies, so we're basically saying Labour's the same.
There's literally, in the ad, it says, don't risk it, Labour equals the Greens. Like, yeah, it's so crazy. It's just like Labour equals herpes. It's like, you may as well, you can just put anything in there and just claim that, I just don't, what?
The thrust of the article, what's that getting at? What's the headline?
Well, the headline is Greens want defence budget cut in half. And this is me speaking here now, and obviously because of the bulletproof equation just above this headline of Labour equals Greens, that means Labour wants defence budget cut in half. But, I went to school, I did the math. If Labour equals Greens and Greens want defence budget cut in half, yes, and the highlighted parts in the ad. That's the thing, this ad has a highlighter, And there's highlighter in it. Like they're using it. The bottom half is an article from the Australian that has been highlighted, and the full sentence is that the Greens have called for the defence budget to be halved and Australia's nuclear-powered submarine plans to be scrapped, arguing, highlighted, the nation should rely on, quote, effective communication to guard against military threats. So I love that even they're highlighting that to be like, they want to talk.
These pussies don't want to go to war with history's largest, million man, largest standing army in historical existence, with weapons that overpower ours by orders of magnitude. What a bunch of pussy bitches! They don't want to go to war with China. What a bunch of cucks!
Absolute madness. And also, can I just critique in their visual design scope? There's a fuck ton of dead space in the top third of this ad.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of wasted space.
You just got a whole lot of white nothing before you get to even like the recognizable faces of the Labor and the Greens parties.
But is it the rule of thirds? It's a third of the way down, and you can see the blank space draws your eye to the bits they want you to look at.
Nah, I'd have made them take up that whole square. Why is there all this white space? But it's just absolute madness. Have we got any more? Oh, we got another one.
Just to clarify as well, it's a Facebook ad.
Yes. And these are being shared by the Liberal Party of Australia Facebook page with the tags of sponsored, and that sponsorship is paid for by the Liberal Party of Australia.
The targeting, I think, is also a really important part of this. Like, they're going after, young men, sort of, whatever it was, 25 to 35. Like, they are clearly sort of targeting people who might otherwise be, Labor or Greens voters in particular districts. Like, I love that you can actually, because Facebook, because the targeting data is so specific, you can actually see like the strategy that
where
they're
it's
going after. Like, and where geographically the ads are being targeted. Like, currently 9 of the 11 ads that they're running in people's news feeds are specifically negative ads against Albanese. They're targeting younger Australians in New South Wales, Queensland, and Tasmania. And obviously questioning Anthony Albanese's qualifications for government, and saying things like they're in the pocket of the Greens and all this sort of stuff, which is like not a good argument to me. I know I'm a Labor voter, and so I'm like relentlessly partisan on this.
It sticks. That through line, by the way, that was repeated by all my family members.
Yeah.
And there is a through line, especially at a state level as well, because it has happened in the past where, like, particularly in like Tasmania, for instance, where there have been Labor-Green coalitions to form government. Yeah. And it's, and there's this sort of concept that, they didn't get anything done. And that is something that's in the Australian zeitgeist. So it's actually a really strong message.
Yeah.
Whether true or not, doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, for me as a lefty, I'm like, okay, like, say they did have a minority government and they had to team up with the Greens and be like, okay, maybe we might actually get some progressive policy pushed through. That'd be nice. Like, but the rest of Australia is like, fucking communists, get the fucking communists, can't trust the fucking Greens. Like, but it's like, we're not talking about voting for the Greens. We're talking about voting for Labor, who's like barely left of center. And it's just like, and they get tarred with the same, like, why does that not work in reverse? That same messaging where it's like, hey, a vote for the Liberal Party is a vote for the most extreme right-wing Christian psychopaths in the Liberal Party. You're voting for George Christensen. You're voting for, in days past, Corey Bernardi. You're voting for fucking Bob Catter. You're voting for, Barnaby Joyce. Like, all of these terrible examples of right-wing psychos on this side, you're voting for those guys as well. You're voting for, people who opposed gay marriage, voting for
the broad church, the coalition.
Yeah, George, the reason it doesn't work the other way around is because those people like those people.
Right.
They go, a vote for the Liberal Party is a vote for, dangerous beetroot Barnaby Joyce. And they're all like, I love that guy. It's like, oh God. All right. No, we're not coming from the same page then. Yeah. Ad number 2.
Yes, that was what
is less about less about giant warships, but still going with it. That equation, it's still in there. Labor equals the Greens. I want you all to remember that. But this much better use of space in my critique of, I guess, the graphic design of this. Like, I feel there's no wasted space in this ad.
Right. Good. Plus, put a tick in that box.
And also good use of colors, because the blue section is where, quote unquote, the good stuff is. And we all know that the Liberal Party's color is blue, and the red area is where the bad stuff is, which is the Labour Party.
They're really emphasizing the red this time around, like red for communist kind of thing. That's the impression
It's a deep red. It's a deep red. Yeah.
Very deep red. But so the top 2/3 of the ad is in big blue print. 10,000 visas have been cancelled or refused on character grounds since we came into office. And then in the red section, why are Labour and the Greens blocking stronger laws to deport dangerous foreign criminals? Don't risk it. I'm going to put my hand up there. Like, maybe they're blocking the stronger laws to deport dangerous foreign criminals or whatever, because you seem so proud of how many visas you've cancelled. Like,
it's just like
it's just like denied.
We kicked fucking thousands and thousands of people out of the fucking country. We don't give a fuck. We'll fucking kick anyone out of the country. Are they brown? Fucking kick him out. Liberal Party, get it in ya. Like,
it really feels like they're not saying, oh, we're protecting the country or whatever, because they don't say that. They're down the bottom. They say Labour and the Greens are blocking stronger laws to deport dangerous criminals. The top part just says we've cancelled 10,000 visas, and you're like, sick one. It's like, you don't even mention that we have prevented X amount of known criminals to come into the country. You're just proud of kicking out people who aren't from here, and that's bad. You don't need more powers to do it, clearly. You've blocked 10,000 visas.
Well, yes.
This is the thing that gets me, is that this is old.
Openly xenophobic. Like, it's like a 20-year-old tactics here where they're just like, get out the fucking immigrants, get out me fucking country, fuck off, we're full. Like, that's basically the message. Is like, and also I hate this, like, just asking questions fucking rhetoric, because it's like, it's also untrue, because Labour do support the plan just with a few amendments. But it's also like, and it speaks to like why I think
as well be their campaign slogan. Yes. Labour, we support the crazy bill, but with a few amendments.
Yeah, basically exactly like the coalition, except slightly less corrupt and with a few amendments. Like, it is basically that, where it's why are Labour? Why are they? I'm just fucking asking questions. Why are they? It's almost like they want to import dangerous criminals to. It's almost like Labour wants to set the country on fire. Why the fuck is that? Why? Just asking questions, man. I'm not. It's like completely fact-free argument, and then if you actually dive into the detail, which of course no one who sees this fucking ad will, you realize that actually they do support the plan to increase the powers to deport more people based on these character grounds. They just don't want it to be applied retrospectively or to New Zealanders. Like, it's really like, and it just goes to show why Labour should be more obstructionist. Vote your values, because it doesn't matter. The other side is going to hit you for being a fucking dirty communist piece of shit anyway, who wants criminals to come in and take over the country and Sudanese gangs on the House of Parliament. That they're going to hit you with vile bullshit nonsense anyway. So you may as well stand up for something, so the people who vote for you can actually see you standing up for something. You know what I mean? Like, they're going to call you a communist regardless.
Yeah, it's very interesting that, isn't it? Because, like, if the idea then is that, we're being attacked for not seeming like we care about whether people who come into the country are criminals or not, setting aside the, crazy xenophobia and just, like, refugee fear-mongering that entails anyway, that they're thinking like, oh god, they're painting us as people who think we don't want to cancel the visas of people coming into the country. No, we better show them that we do. Like, we'll vote it through. We just want it to be not as bad, but we still want to make sure that we're communicating to Liberal Party voters so that they might jump ship. No, we do still support kicking out brown people.
Yeah, at no point, if you roll over, the Liberal Party's not going to go, well, look, they made a good effort. We'll give them a pass this election. We'll give them a pass this time around. They've been pretty good this time.
Yeah, I don't think there's anyone going, ScoMo's such a bell end, but I hate the Labour Party as much. Oh, no, they support similar policies, but they just aren't ScoMo? Oh, I'll vote for them.
And the defense...
I'll just vote for ScoMo again.
The defense, infuriatingly, against this, like, communist attack from Labour is like, no. there's a cigarette paper's worth of difference between the LNP's policy on China and the Labour Party's policy on China. I'm like, what? Why is that a good thing? The LNP has deliberately antagonized our largest trading partner and the sort of regional hegemon, and has done so at the expense of Australian industries left and right, wine and growers and agriculture and all these, sanctions that have been put on us by China because of the LNP's rhetoric about them. Surely Labor's defense to that shouldn't be, but we're exactly the same as those fucking idiots you're about to vote out. It's infuriating.
Yeah. It's really interesting as well that with this actual ad, and the policy, so they're saying that they've done a great job. They've cancelled 10,000 visas.
10,001 with Novak
somehow,
Djokovic. 10,001.
They're also saying that somehow that isn't good enough. That obviously we need to make these laws stronger. Obviously, if you've managed to cancel 10,000 visas since they came to office, so what's that, 9 years? You're doing all right. That legislation is working to a point. So why do you need to strengthen it?
You're saying if you take the position where the barometer of success is more people's visas cancelled is more good, then yes, they've cancelled plenty of visas. They should be, I guess, proud of their work there. But
it is actually a massive thing with the whole New Zealand argument. There is there's a thing, I think, from Four Corners a couple of years ago where there are a lot of Kiwis that are residing in Australia that are having their visas cancelled and they're being sent back to. And it was a couple of years ago, it was a massive stoush between Ardern and Scott Morrison where we were just sending people back to New Zealand like it was going, and we're meant to have, basically open borders with New Zealand pretty much. It was getting pretty awkward because then New Zealand's got these criminals that they don't necessarily want to have either. And going back even further than this, to when they first introduced this legislation, there was the whole thing around, well, you're going to cancel people's visas. What if the only citizenship they've got is Australia or, say, Afghanistan, and they go back to Afghanistan and then they get murdered?
Yeah.
How is this a good policy?
It's
that being said,
and in this ad, they're going as you say, oh, what if we deport this person out of the country and they go back to Afghanistan and they get murdered? And that's when the whole Liberal Party just grins and in the background. We did it.
It is astounding, especially when you realize that the point of the bill, the point of it being introduced now, is to specifically wedge Labor. Alex Hawke, the immigration minister, said on Wednesday, quote, the bill would be put for a vote as a, quote, test for Labor. It's not because the bill necessarily does anything. They're not even at the point where they're legislating to do things that are good for the country. They're literally legislating for the purposes of winning an election, to wedge Labor to try and gain an electoral advantage. This
thing that I also don't understand as well is that they've said that the federal ICAC thing, they can't do it because there's not enough time.
No time!
We're
too busy! It's
but when was this bill introduced?
It's like when it was first introduced in 2018, lapsed at the 2019 election. It was reintroduced in July 2019, defeated in the Senate in October 21, and then they reintroduced it in November last year.
Oh, come on.
No time. No. Adam, we're too busy. Too busy, got too much going on. Can't possibly do federal ICAC.
We're gonna really promise.
No, don't worry about it.
No, promises, schmomises.
We'll get you next time.
Yeah.
It's the bill that'll never die.
Yep. Anyway, in further news this week, breaking news in the department.
Yeah. The no shit klaxons went off in my house when I saw this article.
Yeah, Peter Dutton's office granted grants in areas that did not pass muster, that did not pass criteria, that were not the best areas for the grants to be awarded to. Unless, of course, that criteria is that they are marginal Liberal seats.
That's your Liberal seats, and that you're filled with white Christians. Those seem to be the criteria for getting these grants. The Australian National Audit Office, or ANAO, which needs a better acronym, found.
I keep calling it ANO because I guess
that's what I was trying to avoid.
And it sounds like anal, so you just have that kind of phonetics to it. ANO.
Is it awkward that I thought like half my brain went anus, like in the middle of all that? Like, is that bad?
This is why all of these.
I mean, they deal in assholes, so.
This is the reason that all of these like political ads work, is because like, you know, people like Adam see half a headline and they're just like, Labor is the Greens. Okay. Like, it's just like, I just saw ANO and just go, that's an anus. I just kept walking. So the Australian National Audit Office, or ANAO, found that almost 60% of all projects funded by the Safer Communities Fund since 2016 have been in coalition-held electorates, compared to 27% in Labor electorates. And they found that, this is something we reported on at the time, that reporting suspected that the Defence Minister, Peter Dutton, approved grants based on his own personal criteria in his brain, not the one that his department provided. And there were actually several grants that did not meet the criteria at all.
So it wasn't even just that he picked ones out of the recommendations that weren't even the top candidates. He picked ones that didn't pass the criteria.
Like, didn't meet the test of being worthy of
this spreadsheet. Here are the names that are not on the spreadsheet, and we'll go with those.
I could just imagine I would be so frustrated as a member working in that department under Peter Dutton. You'd be like, we've done a 5-layer matrix on, which funds should go to which things, and we've done an analysis. It's taken us 2 months, and Peter just comes in.
This table picks ass, and then
Peter Dutton just comes in, whips out his balls, dunks has nuts on a couple of things and just walks out and just go, okay, so that months of work is completely useless. Okay, cool. Thanks, Peter. The audit also confirmed that the current Defence Minister, Peter Dutton, approved 2 separate applications worth nearly $200,000 that did not meet the department's selection criteria after visiting the applicants during an earlier by-election. So literally, like, him or his assistant minister visited these places, and then like shortly thereafter they got money. Like, it is literally like, draw a straight line. They may as well have had a duffel bag, canvas bag full with dollar signs written on the side of it. Like, it is as fucking quid pro quo as it gets, and I don't understand how this is not corruption.
It's just like there's absolutely no craft.
There's no subtlety. There's no art to it, Tom. That's you're right. Exactly. There's no
skill,
finesse to it. I want guys meeting in basements. I want some deep throat going on. There's none of that. It's just like, I love a bit of deep throat. It is really like just open-faced pork barreling. They're like, we are going to preference white liberal Christian seats, because they're like, it turns out all this money definitely favored religious organizations as well, but they did happen to be Christian and Jewish religious organizations, Hindu, Tamil, Muslim, all these other religious communities. Like, we didn't get any fucking money at all, and they're like, yeah, I know. Crazy, isn't it? What a weird coincidence.
Like, oh, what a shame. They just stare blankly back at them.
The fund itself was the Safer Communities Fund. Is that what we're talking about here?
Yeah.
That's the actual, the fund that is out of it.
Established in 2016, and I think it was in like 2018, 2019 that the grants were awarded.
And the grants were for like
safety
things
cameras,
like security cameras,
CCTV
and shit,
cameras,
right?
lights, lighting up areas at night so as to not attract sort of seedier criminal elements. Like, it is funny.
Why would there be seedy criminal elements? They're deporting everyone. Why would there be any?
They should be gone.
I thought, like, surely no like local born citizens are criminals, Adam. Like, that just doesn't add up. That doesn't match the data.
It is. This speaks to a broader point, and it's not like funny, but I feel like it should be said. That this goes to show, when people say that, like, white privilege isn't a thing. Like, when you look at this and you look at because we can prove there's statistical analyses that we can use to prove that successive governments over years and years, obviously this happens more so with right-wing governments than it does with left-wing governments, you would think. There's a systemic underinvestment in communities of color. And that is not just, something that happens once every election cycle. We got them. We got the one time they underinvested in this community, which was, Hindu or Tamil or had these other requirements. You can see it is a policy from this government and from successive governments over the years to underinvest in communities that need help and need help the most, you might argue as well, because they've been so systemically underinvested in for decades.
And then they turn around and go, "Oh, but the African youth gangs in Melbourne.
The bloody
why?"
Sudanese gangs. Where did they come from? Why did they have?" It's like, well, maybe it's years and years of disadvantage and being completely ignored by the Australian electorate. Maybe that makes some people a little bit angry.
Then they turn around to Dandenong City Council and they're like, "Why didn't you guys do anything about it?" It's like, bro, they're a city council. They can't fix all
the audacity to underinvest in particular communities for decades and then turn around to them and complain that they're violent criminals that don't deserve resources and investment because they're violent criminals. It's just, the gaslighting is fucking astounding. This, and when people talk about privilege, this is the kind of shit that they talk about. It's them and their mates, their fucking buddies, their fucking seats that they want to hold on to. That's where they spend the money. Okay? Mm-hmm. And if you do that again and again and again for decades, what does that represent other than a systemic bias, a bias that is built into the system to preference white Christian communities? That is the definition of privilege, is when you're consistently giving to one and consistently not giving to another. And then you look at them side by side and they go, well, why aren't they in the same place? Why is black African-American net wealth 1/10 of what it is for the average white family, the average black family versus the average white family in America? It's like, well, because you've been doing this shit for 400 years, consistently privileging one side over another. You keep handing bags of cash to one side and kicking the other side in the nuts and going, oh, geez, it's weird that you guys aren't in the same place. It's so fucking weird and bizarre. You should lift yourself up from your bootstraps, you fucking lazy immigrants. It's the gaslighting is just maddening. Thank you.
Probably a nice way to circle back to the start of the show where we talked about the Russians being stop hitting yourself.
Yes.
Well, yeah, pretty much. Speaking of that, I don't think we had it in the rundown. So, no, I mean, speaking of systemic racism and awful white privilege and everything. I don't think we had it in the rundown.
Hang on. My brother-in-law reckons white privilege doesn't exist. So, yeah, don't worry about it. Continue.
Oh, wait. Sorry. Your brother-in-law. Okay. Yeah. Right. Okay, cool.
Isn't
sorry.
it everyone's brother-in-law?
I guess it doesn't exist then. I think if it's your brother-in-law saying it, holy crap.
He read an Andrew Bolt thing, so I guess he's got all the facts.
Oh, Andrew Bolt. Andrew Bolt said it. Oh, it must be true.
Yeah.
Scott Morrison's comments, I think it was this past week, on the 14th anniversary of the Parliament apology to the stolen generations of Indigenous communities in Australia. Context for those of you maybe not aware. 14 years ago was when then Prime Minister Kevin Rudd did a apology in Parliament for the stolen generations that white Australians did over many decades.
Just to give some context there, so Kevin Rudd, member of the Labor Party, John Howard, his predecessor, who famously refused to do an apology for years and years, member of the LNP, Liberal National Party, which is a member of the party that Scott Morrison is in and who has been in power for the last 9 years. So, just for some context as to who these people are and where they come from for our foreign listeners. Yes, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, but so the Kevin Rudd made an apology for all the, children who were taken away from their families for decades in Australia. It was awful and terrible and one of the many atrocities that we have committed on Indigenous people in Australia. Anyway, so it was the 14th anniversary of that apology, and Scott Morrison's comments on it was quite amazing, even because he's having the worst time, right? Like, it is day after day after day of every single shit thing about him, which I agree with. That's not sympathy for him. He's a piece of shit. But then it was kind of like, can't you go 5 minutes without giving us another reason to call you a piece of shit? And his comments were that some say the hardest word to say is sorry, borrowing that quote, but then followed it up with, but actually the harder thing to say is I forgive you. Just let that sink in for a minute.
What a gaslighting motherfucker.
Was he implying that? Here's a question. Was he
implying that
that
Aboriginal
the
people
Aborigines
need to
had
forgive us
forgiven
for
him,
what we did to them?
or that they should forgive us?
No, that the Aboriginal community hadn't forgiven him, and that they probably should fucking pull their thumbs out.
They'd say, like, the hardest thing for them. Yeah, the hardest thing to say would be, I forgive you for the awful atrocities you committed on us.
First of all, I like, obviously none of us here are Indigenous, so like it's not our place to talk about it, but like it's so crazy gaslighty for a government who the Liberal National Party, as far as I'm aware, never said sorry. It was Labor who said so. Like, the Liberal Party famously refused to say sorry for years and years, and to then
Peter
turn
Dutton
around,
refused to actually be in attendance in Parliament when they said it.
Yes.
Which, ironically, now as leader of the House in the House of Reps, he actually had to do something of like acknowledge it. He had to acknowledge the proceedings, that it was the 14th anniversary of the thing. He refused to attend, which is a nice little delicious irony.
But to take credit for the thing that you refused to participate in, and then to turn around to the Indigenous community and go, oh, but stop whinging about it. We apologize. You should forgive us already. It's like gaslighting beyond belief. Like, I really can't, I can't even get into your theory of mind, Scott Morrison, as to what the fuck you were thinking. Like, did you think it was a clever turn of phrase? Like, I just don't, it's insane. It's it's actually crazy.
It's insane and maddening just to think that the appropriate thing to say in that instance is to say, be the bigger person and forgive us.
Yes.
I can't. I don't oh my God. I don't know how he got up to that podium and thought any of that was a good idea. I can't even think of a stupid reason.
Yes.
I can't even think of a batshit fucking awful reason that you would think that was the right thing to say.
It
breaks all reason.
The audacity of the white privilege that it takes as a man to get up there and have the confidence to say all those things and be like, and you Browns should get over it. You should be over it by now, should you? It's insane. It's so fucking crazy. I just can't. He can't. He's just constantly kicking himself in the penis, just over it. It is. It's not even comical at this point. It's just it just makes me sad and mad that they are still in government. And it's just surely it has to be inevitable. Surely now we've reached a tipping point where it's so egregious that even Liberal National voters okay, fine. We won't vote Labor. We'll vote Pauline Hanson or we'll vote Clive Palmer. But we won't vote LNP anymore. Surely that has to be enough people for that critical mass to tip over in Labor's favor. Surely, it has to be enough at this point, right?
No, I mean the Labor campaign's yet to sort of kick off in earnest, I think. But
they're saving it.
I think the context,
keeping their gunpowder dry for some fucking reason.
I think the context of his statements, I'm not sure whether I've got a funny feeling the way he implied that was that the Aboriginal community had actually already forgiven him forgiven the government.
Oh, trust Adam to try and read it in the most charitable fucking way possible. It's even if that was the case, it's still a fucking weird, awkward way of saying it.
It's a weird way of doing it.
Well, and also it's
the other thing he was throwing in stuff to do with his own faith, intertwining in with it as well, which is
not about you, Scott. It's not about you, mate.
Yeah,
and that's the thing. Anyway. It's the inability to exercise any fucking empathy for anyone else whatsoever to celebrate the 14th anniversary of the national sorry that Kevin Rudd did. It's about reaffirming Australia's commitment to racial equity and understanding the historic wrongs that have been done and understanding there is still so much yet to do. and keeping up the fight against inequality. Like, that's all that anyone expects of you to do, is to say that, is to say, like, we were sorry, we still are sorry, we're keeping on it, and we're going to do better. Like, we don't need anything about you and your faith and about how you've been treated or what you expect out of the Aboriginal community to do for you. It's like, it's not about you. None of this is about you. It's just about maintaining the commitment that we made, that you and your party refused to make, but that another party who was good did 14 years ago. You just going to say, we just keep on keeping on. That was all that was required of you, and they still managed to punch themselves in the ball bag repeatedly.
Yeah, that was how I felt about it too, George. I was just like, how'd you fuck this up?
Yes!
Like, yet another colossal, thing to make everyone say, fuck, you're a piece of shit,
That's
Scott.
unbearable.
On top of all, we were all in the middle of memeing about the fucking 60 Minutes interview, and then he does this.
It's the biggest fucking own goal for no reason. Like, it's just like, this should have been an easy fucking win for you, you dead shit moron. You should have just gotten up there, high-fived yourself, and gone, we're still sorry, we believe in racial equity. And someone, somewhere, watching that would have gone, oh, they've come a long way, racial equity. And that's it. It was the easiest win. And they still managed to just, Sideshow Bob walk into a fucking rake on the easiest fucking, it's just unbelievable. These guys are fucking grown-ups and running the country.
Given his last couple of years, do we think Scott Morrison is more inept at public speaking and public moments than Tony Abbott was?
Ooh. I'll let
if you were to lay a sports bet ad down, just to circle back to the start of the show, if you had to make a sports bet ad, who would you punch?
I would say
that's hard.
I think Scott Morrison's worse because it's in a different way.
Yes.
Tony Abbott would say something that is just like, huh? Like, he'd say he's the suppository of wisdom, or he'd eat an onion, or he'd wink because he realizes he's talking to a sex worker on the phone. He'd do those sorts of things. He'd just be a fucking bell end doing stuff like that. Whilst Scott seems to just keep reaffirming that he is an uncaring lunatic.
Yeah.
He is a fucking awful public speaker in that, he keeps saying the quiet part loud. Or there is no quiet part. It's just all loud all the time, and we're learning what he thinks.
I think the stakes are different as well. It's like comparing one sports team to a historical sports team. It's like 2013, the grass was green, man. The biggest crisis...
Trump hadn't been president yet.
Yeah, the biggest crisis going around was that Tony Abbott ate an onion. He was, goofy. Whereas, in a time of coronavirus, Scott Morrison is dangerous. You know what I mean? The stakes are just different now.
I think that the big thing is that, for me, Tony Abbott didn't say a whole lot, really. He knew that his biggest weakness was public speaking.
Was his mouth.
And Peter Credlin, tried to rein him in. Here's the copy, read the copy, don't free will. They knew that was his weakness. Whereas Scott Morrison overtalks. That's his weakness, is that he says too much. Quite often, rather than just giving a straight answer, yes, no, we'll think about it, whatever it may be, he will overtalk on a subject for 5 minutes and then just give journalists ammunition.
Which
and
is
as
why...
you said, Tom, it actually reveals more about Scott Morrison because he ends up undoing himself through his own psychology.
Which is why the Labor Party's strategy has basically just been to step back and let him shoot himself, just give him enough rope to hang himself with, right? It's just step back and let this idiot talk himself in a circle and ruin his own chances. And it seems to be working.
I would argue, I think I'd rather Scott Morrison than Tony Abbott, but I guess it's partly to do with the fact that at that time, the conservative faction of the Liberal Party was in full swing in 2013, whereas now it's the moderates have a bit more power, so I'd rather Scott Morrison from a position.
Do they
point of
though?
view,
They just advanced a religious freedom bill last week. Like, I don't know if these moderates are really, holding their feet to the fire. I think you're talking about a complete conservative capture of the LNP at this point. So,
well, it could be worse. You could have Dutton.
You could have Dutton, and that would be worse.
I mean, that's a good just comparison for life. It's like, you've had a rough day, your car broke down, you missed that big interview, you didn't get that job, whatever. But Peter Dutton could be Prime Minister. And you're like, oh, fuck, well, yeah, okay.
So
Yeah,
you
know
had
what?
a
Things
bad
aren't so
day.
bad.
You take a one down, you sing a sad song, and then you turn it around. No, you're right. It could always be worse. I would be, like, as worried as I am about Scott Morrison's ineptitude, I am more scared of Peter Dutton's capacity for pure evil. Like, I literally see him as Emperor Palpatine from Star Wars.
Yeah.
Like, that is really he is pure evil.
And you remember that, we said last week, Scott Morrison does engage with the moderates. He tried to offer the federal ICAC in return for the bill.
He didn't really try. He didn't try like he meant to. I feel like Adam's so generous.
What I'm trying to say
you're
is
so generous. Can I borrow $50, Adam? Because you're so fucking generous.
Listen,
right,
I'm just saying there are obviously discussions that Scott Morrison will have with various sections of the party. I would be very surprised if Peter Dutton would even entertain those discussions as a concept, even if it was just to somehow further his own political advantage. I think Dutton would probably be a bit of a stonewall on principle.
I think Dutton would be busy, raising the klaxons and initiating the police state, start rounding up some lefties. I think their approach is different. I would be reticent to ascribe credit to Scott Morrison for not being a total psychopath. I think that might be a tad generous, but let's agree to disagree. Tom, what are your thoughts?
Oh, well, I think, Peter Dutton probably wouldn't be engaging in too much, bipartisan discussions. He'd be, too busy raising the dark mark and summoning his goons, back to the motherland to, guard them Horcruxes.
If the Liberals lose this election, he will be the next leader of the opposition, and that's going to be interesting.
He might be the next leader regardless, right? If anyone was going to topple ScoMo from behind the scenes, it'd be Dutton. And if it's going to be Dutton, it has to happen fairly soon. So it's... I
don't think they'll swap leadership before the election.
I don't think so at this, they seem to have weathered...
If they're going to, they have to do it now.
Yeah.
It's a lot harder than it used to be. They can't just the margin. You've got to have 75% or something, and there's checks and balances.
Thanks to Scott, right? He got
pulling the ladder up after himself.
He knifed in and was like, "Now I want to make sure that no one else can knife me as easily as I knifed the other guys." Stab.
If they've managed to weather the text message total complete psycho storm, then I don't think it's going to happen. But you're right. The minute that ScoMo loses the election, he'll get deposed, and Peter Dutton's terrifyingly will be waiting there in the wings, ready to go. So
be him or Frydenberg.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I would say Frydenberg.
I don't know. He's the treasurer, and the treasurer is always the one who knifes the other person.
Yes, he is the treasurer.
It happened with Gladdy. It happened with Malky.
He is the treasurer, but as well as I do, Tom, he hasn't collected enough Horcruxes to defeat Dutton. So
no, that's true. But he is a colossal bell end, so he does fit the brief.
He has the correct the requirements for the JD job description. Yeah. On that note, we have been, we are, and we always will be Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. Make sure you follow us on all the bullshit social medias that do, or ever will exist at Unnatural Show. It's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and motherfucking TikTok. Make sure you follow me on Twitter and Instagram at George Sipos.
You can follow me on Twitter at Tom D. He.
You can follow me on Instagram at AC Doreen.
And you can follow us all down to watch the April Sun in Cuba. Thanks for listening, guys. Love your faces. We'll see you next week.
I love Cuba. I wouldn't mind going to Cuba. Let's go to Cuba.